All the way back in middle school, I went on a trip to New York City. I was very excited for this trip, although none of my close friends were actually going, so I was forced to make new friends with new people. One of the guys that was kind of in the group of the kids that went to New York was a very, very outspoken Christian. But he also had a lot of weird things about him. And I don't know if you could relate to this, but you meet someone and they're a Christian, so you're supposed to, have this bond with Christ over them. But just something is off. And he honestly just annoyed me the entire time I was around him. Just anything he did, it just felt like he was trying to be annoying and rambunctious and very loud. But on that trip, I read the verse that we actually read today in 1 John that had me really striking to my core. This is 1 John 2, verse 9. If anyone claims, I am living in the light, but hates a fellow believer, that person is still living in darkness. If anyone loves a fellow believer, that person is in the light and does not cause others to stumble. But if anyone who hates a fellow believer is still living in darkness and walking in darkness, such person does not know the way and is having been blinded by the darkness. So I'm sitting there on this trip with this guy that I'd actually, through this scripture, realized that I had some hatred for him. He was very much a hypocrite. He was a very loud Christian, but then he did things that really shocked me. In New York City, there's women that walk around with not much clothes on, and he went up to take pictures with them. He would talk about those sort of struggles that he had almost boastfully. And it made me realize that, man, I really don't like this guy at all. He's a hypocrite. And then I read the scripture and I realized that I didn't need to be hateful towards him, but instead I needed to be loving towards him. And one of the ways that we do that, I think, as believers, is instead of dwelling on the bad parts of who someone is, we should instead spend time dwelling on who God is and the redemptive quality that Jesus brings. You see, when we're constantly focusing on the negative of someone, we don't actually realize what God has done for that person. And instead, when we spend time in prayer, loving that person, it can really change not only our heart towards them, but also their heart towards God. See, when we hate someone, it's poisoning ourselves and hoping that they die. In reality, we should instead be spending time in prayer, hoping that they turn and repent to God. What was beautiful is at the end of that trip, that guy actually came up to me and told me that through me loving him on that trip, it showed him that he should be pursuing God differently. And honestly, I wasn't trying to do anything special. I just knew that I shouldn't be going out in the streets of New York taking pictures with girls not wearing any clothing. But I think if I hadn't read that verse, I would have shown hatred towards him, and he wouldn't have been able to see the love of God through me. And honestly, as I say that story back to you, I'm reminded of people in my life that I need to show more love to and less hatred towards. I'm definitely preaching to the choir, if you will, with this sort of Bible study. But I think it's important for us to examine ourselves constantly and see how we can love people better in order to be better servants of Christ. Thanks so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, leave a like. It really does help the channel. And I'll see you back here later as we continue to read through Scripture together.